Rosalind Jordan joins us live now from Washington, D.C. Ros, there was a White House briefing a little bit earlier, and clearly they're not happy about Karzai's push to delay signing the pact.
No, Mariam, they are not happy either at the White House or here at the State Department, because it really comes down to the ability to make plans that are not only going to be as successful as possible for this transition from a war footing to a support and training footing, but also in terms of trying to save money. This is Josh Earnest, the Deputy White House spokesperson, speaking a little earlier on Thursday.
Failure to get this approved and signed by the end of the year would prevent the United States and our allies from being able to plan for a post-2014 present. So what we're focused on right now is getting this agreement approved and signed before the end of the year.
Now, it's not just a matter of doing the practical planning of removing the troops who are no longer going to be needed in Afghanistan, or deploying those troops who would be needed for this new training and support mission, but there's also the larger question of creating a vacuum where someone within the Afghan government, perhaps a member of the Loya Jirga, some other political entity, could start making changes or attempt to make changes to this bilateral security agreement. That could also create many legal problems for the U.S. government as it tries to pursue its aim of trying to stay in Afghanistan to help stabilize Afghanistan. If that opportunity were to be taken, U.S. officials are very concerned, Mariam, that it would just create many more difficulties and raise the possibility that all U.S. forces would leave Afghanistan by the end of next year, with no one being in the country as of January 1st, 2015. That's a scenario they would very much like to avoid.
Rosalind Jordan in Washington, D.C., thank you. Well, to the UK, where 3 women have been freed from a house in London after being held there against their will for 30 years. One of the women had been in captivity her whole life. Police say 2 people have now been arrested in connection with the case. Tim Friend reports.
The police officer in charge of this case has described it as the most serious and worst case of its kind that he has ever experienced in terms of how long the women were held. 3 decades held in slavery, apparently without close neighbours realising what was going on. This all took place in a nondescript house in an ordinary London street. 30 years the women were held. They had some limited freedom, but it was very limited. And I understand that during that time they were abused both physically and mentally, although there is no suggestion of sexual abuse in this case. This is what the police officer heading this inquiry had to say earlier.
These are deeply traumatised people, and it is essential that we work sensitively to establish the facts in this case. When we had established the facts, we conducted the arrests this morning. We've established that all 3 women were held in this situation for at least 30 years.
Well, the UK Home Secretary, that is the Interior Minister here in Britain, has said she is shocked by what she's heard about this case. She says she realises that the police are still trying to establish the precise facts, but she has repeated her determination to stamp out what she described as modern-day slavery.
Close to 500,000 Somali refugees in Kenya have been told it's time to pack their bags and leave the Dadaab camp. The Somali and Kenyan governments signed an agreement with the UN to repatriate them within 3 years. To make matters worse, the UN is also cutting down food rations at the camp by up to 20% because of a shortfall in donor assistance. Well, the Dadaab camp is like a small city. It has an administration centre, even its own market, primary schools and a hospital. It's been home to Somali refugees for more than 20 years. The camp was established in 1991 to hold 90,000 people, but it has since grown to nearly 5 times the intended size. As of April this year, the population stood at close to 500,000 registered refugees, so a massive jump. Most of the refugees living in the camp don't want to return to Somalia. They say that they fear violence and possible persecution. Peter Grester sent this report from the camp.
Nobody is going to convince Mumina Abdi that it's safe to go back to Somalia. She and her 2 children are 3 of Dadaab's newest arrivals. They came to the sprawling refugee camp in August.